Hello dear, welcome to the practical class of our JavaScript tutorial. And today we're going to be starting our practicals, and we're gonna start from by solving simple examples, because just to give us the basic understanding of how JavaScript work. So this week we're gonna look at basic examples, and today's example I'm gonna be creating a website, but this website is just to solve some few questions, and you're gonna see how I'm gonna create the website. So I'm gonna bring in my CSS library. Again, recall we have been using the W3 CSS. The W3 CSS is a simple CSS framework. So I'm gonna need the W3 CSS framework, and I'm gonna just copy only this one here, and then I'm gonna paste it here. Okay, or I'm gonna create a new folder here as well and call it the CSS folder. Then I'm gonna paste my W3 CSS in it. Then the next thing is that I'm gonna create a new HTML page. So now look at this. I'm gonna start my CMD here on this directory, and I'm gonna launch this directory on my VS Code. Yeah, trust this directory. Now this is my VS Code. I'm gonna expand it briefly. Again, you didn't see the command that I used to launch my VS Code, which will automatically open that directory in the VS Code. So I'm gonna show it to you now. Now look at the command. So if I go to a folder, again, let me repeat it for those of us that are slow in understanding. Look at this. The first thing I did was to click on the address bar and change and just write CMD and press the enter key. Now this simply pops up the command prompt already reading that current directory. So the command prompt is already in that current directory. You can see codes desktop slash codes backwards slash codes. So that means I'm already in that directory. Now if you want to automatically launch this directory as a folder like this on your um, editor, then you just write code, and then you put space, then you put a dot, then it automatically launches. So I already launched one, so I don't want to launch another, so I'm gonna close this one now. Now here's my CSS folder, and here's my w3v4.css. Now I can create a new a new folder here by simply clicking on this folder here if I want to, but I think I need to create a new file, my index dot so I can create index.html like this, right? Now I can as well create a JavaScript. Now there are two ways again I can bring in my JavaScript code. I can use the internal method where I use a script tag, or I can create my JavaScript file where I have a .js file. Maybe I can call it index.js like this, right? So my JavaScript can exist in this file, or it can exist in my HTML file but enclosed in the script tag. So but then I'm gonna bring in my doc type. I'm gonna bring in my HTML like this, and then I'm gonna bring in my head tag like this, and then my title tag like this, and I'm gonna give it JavaScript practical example like this, for example. Okay, next is my body tag like this, And then in my body tag, I can now, if I'm gonna use this external JavaScript, then I have to link to it using the script tag again, like this. Or no, I would rather go for the script source, like this. And then the source is going to be index.js. Now, why did I not attach maybe js slash this? Why didn't I do that? Because my index file is not inside any folder that is called js. So since my index file, my index.js file is not even in any folder, then I don't need to do this. I'll just put the name like that, this way. Understand? I'll just put the name like this. Since this HTML file and this index file are just next to one another, so the name is sufficient. But if the index.js file, maybe I have another folder here, maybe I call it js, and then maybe this file you will see here exists inside here, like let's say I put it inside here now, and I moved it. Then if I want to link that JS file to this my HTML file here, then I'm gonna put JS slash like this, right? Because the index.js is in a folder. Okay, so that should do. Now, what exactly do I want to do with JavaScript? What example am I trying to do today? I'm trying to create a web page that I can use to do simple arithmetic like addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. So I have two inputs for number one and another input for number two. Then I have a button. Then I have another output where I'm going to display the result. So look at this. I'm going to bring in a container now. I'll say div.w3 container like this. Then I'm going to bring in a label like this. I'll say enter p, or just a first number, just a first number. I can put this label, enclose this label in a section, so I can say div.w3 section. A section gives you know, a space, a padding to the top, padding to the down, a space at the top and bottom, either a padding or a margin. So it helps you to space your inputs. Now this is an input. If it's gonna be a number, I can change the type to number. In that case, you can't enter text. I can bring in my class and say w3 input like this. I can give it a border if I want, and I can give it a round edges by giving it w3 round. That's sufficient. Now, since I'm gonna be accessing this input, trying to get its content or whatever the user have imputed on this input, then I need to give it an ID. I'll say ID first like this, or first underscore number like this. Makes more sense because it's more readable, understandable. So I'm gonna duplicate this one again to form the second number like this. So I have two numbers, right? So this is second number, and then the first here, I'm gonna change it to second as well, the second underscore number. Then I now have a button, so I'm gonna create another div.w3 section here. I'm gonna create another div now. I say w3 btn, w3 round, w3 green. It should have a green color, and it should be floated to the right. So I'll say w3 right, I've never really tried this chaining on this, how it worked. Then I'm gonna say add like this, right? Then the output now, the output, I'm gonna create another okay, the output is gonna be a label. So I'm gonna say div dot w3 section here, and then I'm gonna bring in a label, say label like this. Again, this label I'm gonna use JavaScript to access it, so I need to give it an ID, right? So I'll give it an ID. I'll say result. Let's say result like this. Then this button as well is gonna need an ID because I'll need to attach an event to it, a click event, so that when this button is clicked, then I'll be able to fire some codes. I'll be able to, that's when I'll be able to say, okay, get me the content of this, get me the content of the second input, add them together, put the result in this. So we call that what? An event. So the events, a simple definition of event is like a way to respond to users' interaction with what? With your web page. So when the user loads this web page, he can do a lot of things. For example, he can click on a button, he can resize the page, he can do so many things, right? He can hover on items. So there are different events that tend to represent those users, interaction with what? With your web page. So, for example, the most commonly used event is the onClick. So this event is being fired when somebody clicks on an element. So first of all, I'm gonna launch my index here on a web page here. Okay, I'm gonna move out this guy out. I've been using my W3 CSS classes, but I've not really added my W3 CSS to my web page. So I'm gonna do that now. You can see that all the W3 classes I have defined, none of them have surfaced. Look at, none of them have worked. But if I go to my code like this and I add my using the link tag, say link CSS like this, and I say my CSS is inside a folder called CSS, or CSS slash, then I'll say w3 .css. Now if I go back to my web page and refresh it, you're gonna see that my form is now have been affected with W3 CSS. Okay, so now you see this is the onClick event. Now look at this. I'm gonna just add a simple code to this onClick. We have the alert function. The alert function in JavaScript is a global function. What does it do? It pops up a modal window with the content that you've given to it. So I'm calling an alert function now, and I'm going to give it a content here in a single quote. I'm using a single quote because outwardly I have a double quote here. So if I use a double quote inside here, JavaScript, this code is going to be confused. The JavaScript engine is going to be confused, right? So if I'm using a single quote outwardly, then I'll use a single quote inside, and if I'm using a single quote outside, then I will use a double quote like that. So if I give a text now, say add button clicked like this, that's what an alert function does. Give it a content, and whenever it fires, it's gonna just display you that content, right? So mostly they are used for displaying error messages or success messages in your web page. Somebody registered, you can just alert say registration successful, something like that. It's more of a dialog box, give information. Okay, I'm gonna refresh that, then I'll click on it. You can see that. So JavaScript is already in work now. Now, this is how an event works. If I don't click on it, if no user clicks on this, then the code that is here won't run because the event has not happened. But the moment you clicked, then the event has happened. Now, in essence, I can call another function, which is maybe my own function here. Now look at this. Okay, I'm just gonna cut this. Now already I've added my JavaScript file, which is an external file here. So I'm gonna define a new function now as a function add. Again, recall a function is a script or a block of code, that will only be executed when called upon. So that means, again, the code exists, but it's not gonna run until you make a call to it. Now I'm gonna paste that my alert that I copied here and save it. So look at how I'm gonna call this function. In my JS file, I have this new function, and I'm gonna call the add function here now. Again, I'm just gonna write the name of the function, and it's gonna work because this file here had already been added here. Okay, so I'm gonna just refresh again my page. If I refresh it and I click here, it worked. You can see that it worked. So the onClick function is calling the add function here, and the add function is calling the alert function. That's what's happening. So you can see how it's like passing a message, right? Say you add, do something for me, and add say, okay, you alert, do this for me. So it breaks down. That's how you break down problem into different function. Okay, now what I'm trying to do here is that whenever you click on the add button, it should, if somebody maybe had entered 40 here like this and entered 70 here, and then click on the add, then it should pick this 40, right, pick the 70, add them together, and maybe display the result somewhere below. Okay, so to do that, I have given an ID to my first input here, right? That's second input. So this is the first input, and this is the second input. So I'm gonna, to get the content of that input, I'm gonna say, of course I have to store it in a variable. Maybe I can say variable first underscore number is equals to, again, document referring to what? Index.html. So that's how you refer to index.html. In JavaScript, you say document. So already this file has been added to it. So when you say document, automatically it knows you are referring to what? This file, right? So document.getElement. So you are trying to get an element from inside of all this your code. There are so many elements here. This an element, this an element, this an element, label is an element, input is an, all of them are elements, right? Elements in elements, and some elements are in other elements. But then you are getting the element by its ID. So you're gonna be using the ID, which is either this one or this one, to get that element. So that means at the end, the whole of all of this input will be returned to you. So watch how I'm gonna break this down for you. So I'm gonna say get element by ID, then I'll supply the ID, which is what? First underscore number. Now if I stop here now, Again, console, I'm gonna log this in the console.log first underscore number. So I'm logging this particular variable. Again, I'm gonna change the variable name. And why do I want to do that? I want it to be different from the ID. So I'm gonna just say maybe number 1. So I'm gonna, so that you understand the code very well. Again, here I am referencing the variable number 1, right? So if I open my console here like this, I'm gonna refresh my page. I want to add 3 and 4. I say add. Okay, the first is my alert. I'm gonna remove that. Next is this. Now watch. I'm gonna delete this alert. I don't need it. Now I said number 1 is document.getElement by ID, and I supply the ID that is attached to the first input. The ID that is attached to the first input. Remember, 2 elements shouldn't have the same ID. Okay. Then I console. Look at what it gave me in the console. Exactly that same what? That same element. Look at it. Can you see that? It gave me the element, which is the exact element. So this is how JavaScript works. You say document.getElement by ID. So you are trying to return an element that has an ID of that you've supplied, which is this particular, the whole of this element. Now, every kind of element have certain kind of attributes that they have. For example, inputs normally have value. For example, if I want to give a default value to this input, let's say by default I want 50 to always appear inside, I can just write 50, and then 50 becomes what? A default, content of the input element. Now, in essence, what I'm trying to show you is that the value property helps you to what? Put content. It does not only help you to put content, it also helps you to what? To retrieve the content. So if I say number 1 is equals to document dot get element by ID, and I supply the ID, and then after that I now say dot value, this will automatically return whatever is inside what that input, and by default we have 50 inside. So if I say like this, I'm gonna have 50. You can see that. So my number 1 variable is now the value of that input. Do you see how I took it step by step? I took it from here and I show you how it returned the element for me. Then I now made you to understand that the element has a value property that is used in setting its content or retrieving its content. Then I now use that dot value to retrieve its content, and now I now have the 50, which is the default content, displayed to me, and I logged it in the console. So this is how you can use console.log to check the content of your variables. Okay, that's the next thing I'm gonna do. I can now repeat this for the second number. So I'm gonna copy this and I'll change this one to number 2, and of course the ID of number 2 element is second underscore number dot value. So at this point I can as well console.log of number 2. Now doing this will automatically give me the content. Now I want to remove this default. I don't want it, so I want the user himself to enter a number to it. So I'm gonna change this to 5, and I'm gonna change this to 6. I'll say add, So it's gonna give me 6 because I'm consoling what? The second number. Now, the next thing I want to do is that I want to sum them. So I can create a new variable that's a sum, where sum is equal to, then I'll say number 1 plus number 2, like this. Of course, I'm gonna console the sum now for you to see the result. So I'm gonna refresh again. Remember, every time you edit, you have to refresh. If I say 3 and I say 4, I say add, of course the answer is this. Now, there's a problem here. Instead of adding, it's concatenating. You can see that. So why will it concatenate for me? Well, what that means is that it has retrieved these variables as what? As strings, right? Now, in order to convert it to a number, I can do many things. For example, I can use the number function, say number, to convert it to an integer like this. I can as well use the same number function to convert this like this. And then I can, of course, now it's gonna give me what? My correct answer. So if I say 3, 4 and I say add, the result is 7, right? Okay. Now the next thing is that the last thing I want to do is that I want to be able to put this 7 inside this label here, which is my what? My result, my output, right? Again, the label has an ID called result. So remember, the value is used to what? To set and to retrieve. So that's just what I need. I'm gonna say document that get element by ID, and then I'm gonna supply my result dot value should be equal to sum. Now there's a problem with this. The problem is that the result, the label element, usually don't have an attribute called value, right? So if I had done this, I won't see a default for here, because the label element by default has no attribute called what? Value. So this brings us to another attribute called the inner HTML. The inner HTML helps you to set that content that exists in between the opening and closing tag. For example, if I say label and I now say if I say something like this, say answer column 7, if I want the result to display in this format, if I refresh my web page, you can say answer 7. Now this content is what we refer to as the inner HTML. It could be a simple text, it could also be what? A HTML text. So I'm gonna close this, delete that, and so if I say result then dot inner HTML sum, then the sum is gonna appear in that label. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna add 50 plus 30. Of course the answer is 80, and there you go, that's the answer. Now I want some kind of string to come before the answer, so I can do something like this, then concatenate. So I can say something like answer column like this. Then if I refresh that, I say add 23 plus 34. What's the answer? Answer 57. Right? So this is just a simple example. So we're gonna be starting from simple example this week, and then go up to complex examples before maybe next week we can be sure of starting our project. Um, See you in the next tutorial tomorrow.